Could you say, I know Michaela and who else, Laura?
Michaela and Perry.
Oh, okay, okay. Laura, I think we'll just give it maybe a few more minutes for others to join. So,
Sounds good.
Patrick, is that a Zoom background, or do you have kind of an aesthetic side to you an aesthetic interior designer side to you I didn't know about?
I am fooling you well because I am messy, so that is definitely an aesthetic background.
I love it. I like that one.
Yeah.
Should get that.
It fits what I would like to be like, but my office is such a mess with papers all over the place. And
I actually would have thought you'd be very organized and neat.
I should caveat that it's organized chaos, I should say, because every Myers-Briggs test I take says that I am a very strong like J, so that I like organization and structure. So
Makes sense.
So we have two people on the phone. Who are our two callers? One is Tamika, but who's our other?
it's the 216 number.
It's Carney.
Oh, okay. Laura, how many do we need for a quorum?
8.
8. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we're missing 1.
We are.
Okay. So we'll just wait a few more minutes and hopefully one more will join so that we can have a quorum.
So Lisa is about to join.
Okay.
Yep. Hey, Dr. Collins.
It's Terry.
Oh, okay. Terry, are you on 3?
I'm on it. I'm on.
Okay, awesome. And did you say Lisa was joining too?
Yeah, she's going to join too. So I think we are good to go.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone. It's the beginning of the school year, so yay. Let's go, team. Let's go. Let's pump it up. All right. The time is now 5:21 Eastern time, and we call to order DC Prep Board meeting. Today's date is September 17th, 2024. Welcome to the board meeting. I'm Patrick. I'm the board chair. And folks that we have present today are Tanika, Terry, Dan, Emily, Hadley, Pam, and Rashida. Did I miss anyone? Is Lisa here now? Is she the 415? Let's see a 415 number.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
Thank
that's
you.
me. I'm sorry, that's me. Thank you.
that's all right. So this is obviously a video meeting tonight. We have a quorum. With that being said, our first order of business is to review and approve June's minutes. So if you haven't had an opportunity to look at them ahead of time, please review them quickly for the next 2 minutes, and then we'll make a motion to approve. Does anyone need any more time? If not, could I have a motion to approve June's minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Tanika,
Approve.
Terry,
Approved.
Lisa,
Approved.
Dan,
Yes.
Emily,
Approved.
Hadley, I know I saw her earlier. Hadley, Pam,
Approved.
Rashida,
Approve.
and Patrick's approved also. The motion carries. The minutes have been approved. Laura, I will turn it over to you because I think you are the Cassie stand-in. So
Great. So I was sharing with, thank you, Hadley. Hadley has also approved the minutes. Vivian, can I ask you to present the CAPE results? And everyone, this is Vivian Harris, who has joined our DC Prep team. We are very thankful to have her. She's been doing a terrific job of supporting us with a million different things, including board support. So she helped to assemble the board notes, and we'll be working on supporting with things like the minutes, the transcript, any needs that you have. You should feel free to reach out to me or to Vivian, and we can make sure that we support you with whatever you need. Okay, so with that context, Vivian, are you able to present the CAPE results, or yep, okay, awesome, thank you. Okay, Cassie would normally be presenting. She was slated to present on tonight's agenda, but has a family emergency has pulled her away. And so I will be stepping in to share our CAPE results. So as you all know, every year we share the results of the big statewide assessment that is administered in DC. In prior years, we talked to you about the PARCC test. PARCC is basically the precursor to CAPE. CAPE is the PARCC test with a different name, but the same focus. So CAPE is administered to students in grades 3 through 8 and high school, and is meant to be an assessment of, give me one second. It is meant to be an assessment of whether or not students are on track to be college and career ready in ELA, math, and science. So CAPE is designed to measure the knowledge and skills that are most important for students, understanding complex texts, evidence-based writing, mathematical problem solving. Since all public schools, both district and charter, are required to administer it, it provides a really important benchmark for families to be able to evaluate their own child's learning and to evaluate the strength of their child's school. The results of the CAPE test matter a lot to us as well. Not only does it give us a way to evaluate whether we're delivering on our commitment to families, but it's one of the most significant ways in which we are held accountable by both OSSE and PCSB. So CAPE data is the largest single factor in whether or not our schools are highly ranked relative to other schools. So it's pretty important. I'm going to start by sharing some citywide context just to kind of give you like a way of situating our results within like a broader scheme. The first slide here shows the test scores in Washington, D.C. And what you see here is what you already know, which is scores in both reading and math were climbing slowly but steadily, prior to the pandemic. Then during the pandemic, there was no PARCC test administered. And the first time that the test was administered was in 2022. And results fell pretty significantly, in between 2019 and 2022. You see some recovery that has started to take place since 2022, but the recovery has been slow, and the results from last year to this year are pretty flat citywide. If you go to the next slide, Vivian, I think this like kind of illustrates it even more significantly. So the scores. This was an OSSE slide, but I think if you look at the numbers, you can agree that data was pretty flat from the year before. On the next,
just a quick question: is proficiency scoring a 3 or a 4 is considered proficient?
A 4 or a 5 is proficient.
Okay.
A 3 is kind of like approaching proficiency.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. So on this slide, this illustrates the way that proficiency levels break down citywide by grade band. And what you see here is that overall, 33.7% of students are proficient or better in ELA. And you'll see that scores are the strongest in ELA in grades 6 through 8. On the next slide, this looks at math results. So math has lower proficiency levels than ELA. 22.5% of students citywide were proficient or better on the math assessment. And you see here that like the math results math proficiency levels tend to fall over time. So they're the highest in grades 3 through 5 and drop as the standards get harder and harder. And so the lowest proficiency levels are in grades 9 through 12. This next slide kind of further illustrates that point. You can see that ELA proficiency rates are highest in grades 6 through 8. Math proficiency rates are highest in grades 3 through 5. This slide illustrates something that I know that you all know, which is there are significant differences in proficiency rates between students who are and are not experiencing economic disadvantage. And that's like one of the reasons why the work that we do of really specifically trying to make sure that we create great schools for all students, particularly economically disadvantaged students, is so important because there is a major divide in our city between students who are and are not experiencing economic disadvantage. This is a screenshot from a data dashboard that's put together by Empower K-12, which is a nonprofit in the city that looks at the results of of our students, and tries to put a spotlight on like how well schools are serving all students, but particularly students who are economically disadvantaged. And what this shows us is that recovery after COVID has not been fast enough. That economically disadvantaged students are particularly off track in their academic recovery after COVID. And that wards 5, 7, and 8, which are the wards where our schools are located, continue to be far behind outcomes relative to wards 2, 3, and 4 in particular. The next slide illustrates kind of the same point, but in math. And I'm happy to share this data dashboard if any of you are interested in checking it out later. The next slide is again from an OSSE presentation, and it shows that relatively small percentage of schools, so 33% of schools increased their ELA proficiency rate by at least 3 percentage points. 57 schools, or 25% of schools, increased their math proficiency rate by at least 3 percentage points. One of the things that I was excited by was in ELA, our Benning Elementary campus grew by 6.8 percentage points. Our Edgewood Elementary campus grew by 6.4 percentage points. Our Anacostia Middle campus grew by 7.1 percentage points. And our Edgewood Middle campus grew by 4.6 percentage points, which tells us that, you know, our schools were growing much faster than the city in ELA. And in math, our Benning Middle campus grew by 4.7 percentage points. So again, kind of, you know, faster than most schools in the city.
Hey, Laura.
Yep.
And maybe you're going to get to it in this DC prep, but when you look at your, like, both the variety of the results that were listed in the notes that you sent around, because some schools grew a lot, some less so. So there was a big variety. And I think you note in the previous slide that it sort of gives insights into what programs were successful or not. Is there clear rationale or reasons for why you saw what you did within DC Prep? Is it, and I guess it would be interesting to hear what some of those were, whether it's the demographics going back to the different performance by demographic, or it was school specific, classroom specific, et cetera.
Yeah, I love that question. Let me come to that, because I think
absolutely. I may have jumped ahead.
No, it's okay. But that's exactly what the type of question that we are asking ourselves as well. And I think the next couple of slides is going to help to illustrate that, and then I'll speak to that more directly.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So on the next slide, just as a reminder, I know that you all know our mission, but our focus is really around preparing students from underserved communities, wards 5, 7, and 8, academically and social emotionally, to succeed in competitive high schools and colleges. Like we all try to remember that, you know, as we think about making sure that we are really, some schools do a good job of delivering on, you know, high proficiency levels overall. But if you kind of like really dig in and look at whether or not they're serving all of their students, it's not always the case. And so when I walk through the data, you'll see kind of both like our data overall and the way that we're serving our students who are experiencing economic disadvantage in particular. So on slide 15, this shows our math results by school across our 3 middle schools, because, you know, our middle schools have grades 4 through 8. These are our results in math. And what you can see here is, you know, there are a number, to the question I think that Dan was asking, you see a lot of like variation, you know, by school and also by grade. And I think that this speaks to the strength of particular teachers who are really excelling at serving their students. You also, though, you know, given like the overall trend line, it is notable that like our students are outperforming the city in pretty significant ways, particularly in like some of these higher grades. You know, look at grade 6, EMC in grade 7. And then our 8th graders, all of our 8th graders take algebra, which is unique in the city. That's not the case for most schools. And I think with this, what I draw from this is the longer our students are with us, like, the stronger they tend to perform. And that is a different trend line than what you see citywide. So it tells me that there's like something about the power of like remaining at DC Prep over time that is working. If you look at the same picture in ELA, you see that trend line, I think, in some ways, like even more clearly. You see many of our campuses who are continuing to like outperform, in 6th grade, you see AMC and EMC outperforming the city average. You see AMC, BMC, and EMC outperforming in 7th grade. And you see both BMC and EMC, which are the only 2 schools that had 8th graders last year, outperforming the city average in ELA in 8th grade. If you look at the same data, but you cut it, to focus on students experiencing economic disadvantage, what you see is we are significantly outperforming the city in most grades, in both ELA and in math. And you do definitely see some variation across our campuses, which tells us something that's important. One of the things that's very notable though is if you look at grade 6, you see very similar performance between AMC and EMC. Our AMC campus serves the highest percentage of students who are experiencing economic disadvantage relative to of our 3 campuses. EMC has the lowest percentage, but both of them have been able to achieve very strong results and serve students very well. And so I think this tells us a lot about the ways in which our teachers, in particular classrooms, are really making a difference and serving students really well. Patrick?
Laura, I had a quick question. I remember years ago I was asking Miss McClam when she was the EMC principal why our scores, even back then, were with the 4th graders always seemed to be a little bit lower. And she remarked that we get a significant number of our kids that are not within our network that come in at 4th grade. That was several years ago, but I'm wondering, do we still kind of see that dynamic? Because obviously it seems like the data shows that they pick up later, but do we still think that that's maybe why our scores, particularly in math, tend to be a little bit lower with our 4th graders, because a significant number of those kids have not gone through DC Prep into 3rd grade?
I think there is something to that. I would also say, we're always continuing to think about what is true about our program in grades 4 and 5, and how do we continue to invest in that transition between elementary and middle. We do see that students, pick up steam the longer they're with us, but I don't know whether or not you can totally attribute what you're naming to purely being about the entry of new students. Dan?
Yeah, just, and this is helpful. I guess part of my previous question would be related to this, which is AMC and EMC doing a great job in 6th grade, EMC clearly doing a great job all over the map here. What are they doing that BMC wasn't? And then I guess most importantly is, how do you take learnings from AMC and EMC, and what's the process to get BMC doing whatever it was that made AMC and EMC successful?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. And I can talk about what we are trying to do now. Let me show you one more slide and then let me
Okay.
go to
Sorry.
what no, it's okay. I was going to show you like because our focus is really on like getting students ready for high school. I thought this was like an interesting view. This basically is a chart of all of the schools that list CAPE data for ELA. I focus specifically on schools that serve enough students who are experiencing economic disadvantage in order to like have results. And you can see that we are outperforming every other school. The next slide is focuses on all of our 8th graders take algebra. And so there were only these 3 schools that had data because of like the size of the population and maybe some weirdnesses about like the CAPE data set. But we are also outperforming DCPS and EL Hands. So I think there are things that we are doing well that we are proud of. And I think the questions that you all are asking are exactly the things that we're focused on, which is like, how do we create more consistency of results, both kind of like across our schools and over the course of our grades. So if you, Chevy. Chevy, did you want to ask?
Speaking of your own mute. Chevy, you're on mute if you're speaking. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Chevy said his system is blocking him. If you want to type your question, I'm happy to take it through the chat. I'm going to start talking about like what do we make of the CAPE data, but Chevy, I will keep an eye on the chat and see if you have any questions that you put in there. Okay, so the question that y'all have been asking is like, okay, what do we make of all of this? So in our strongest classrooms, we saw the most proficient teachers. We saw teachers who excelled at really building relationships with students, who ran more structured classrooms that had strong routines. They implemented our program with fidelity, including really delivering on Tier 1 instruction every day aligned to our standards. They looked at data from our students regularly with their co-teachers and really planned like what they were going to do in response to it. They did a better job of implementing Tier 2 interventions where they need to like group students into small groups to really try to target skill gaps. And we saw strong partnership between co-teachers who were really thoughtful about like what they were both doing to make sure that they were meeting the needs of students in the classroom. There was a stronger adherence to grade level rigor, even when students had skill gaps, and they were better able to kind of navigate the challenge of like getting kids to the bar for the standard versus trying to kind of like meet students where they were right then and build kind of towards the standard. There was also stronger classroom culture where students knew what was expected of them. They had clear routines. Students were held accountable for behaviors. And students kind of spent more time on task doing high quality work in response to what the teacher asked of them. There were also stronger school-wide culture. So schools that were more effective at implementing the behavior management system and addressing student support needs more quickly and with greater consistency. That helps to make it possible for our teachers to be able to focus on student learning and student engagement. In classrooms with weaker outcomes, we saw less of that. And in our schools with weaker data overall, we saw lower attendance, we saw weaker school-wide routines, weaker implementation of our culture systems, and less experienced school leaders. In some instances, we saw that schools had a greater number of new students who entered DC Prep with very low data. And so they were kind of like trying to address larger skill gaps to be able to like get students to the bar. And while we did see that those students grew, like if you kind of like dig in and look at student by student level data, they didn't grow enough for that to like really show up and like move the needle on CAPE. So that sparks a number of questions for us. How do we equip our teachers to continue to deliver on like what we're calling like a both and approach? So remediating for skills and knowledge. You can go back, Vivian, to, yeah, go back one more. Yeah, great. Remediating skills and knowledge from prior grade levels while also continuing to push forward with rigorous grade level work that's going to be necessary for them to be successful in the grade that they're in. We are really working to make sure that we have enough time to intervene with our students who have more significant academic gaps. Time is always a challenge. We're trying to identify if there's like specific students that we need to do more for. So that was a big topic of conversation today. And then we're talking a lot about how we can develop our coaches so that they have the right content, knowledge, skills, and habits to be able to coach our teachers. Since we believe like the unit of change to really make a difference across our schools is the classroom. We have been very focused on what we can do to support our special population students. So students who may have IEPs in particular, to make sure that we're meeting their needs, and we're helping our teachers to really think about like how teaching teams and the leaders who focus on special populations can work together to serve all of our students. So those are kind of like very high level takeaways. The way that we're translating those into practice this year is through our school plan. Our school plan conceptually is outlined on page 22. So what we believe is that everything starts like in the classroom. And so the more that we can focus on having strong tier 1 culture, that's like what every student experiences every day in the classrooms that they're in. Like we want our students to experience, teachers who really know them and communicate belief in them, where students are encouraging one another and the class has strong routines that help students to be able to remain focused throughout the day. We spent a lot of time, I'll quickly wrap this up and then take questions. We spent a lot of time during August orientation to help teachers plan how to deliver on strong culture. And we're spending like the first 4 weeks of school really having leaders go into every classroom and spend time making sure that we believe that classroom is set up for strong learning and leaning in to support teachers who need more help. And so they're very focused on what's called like the Act 1 checklist. And so they're going in and checking every classroom all the time and spending a lot more time in the classrooms of teachers who need more help to establish that. The second big thing that we're doing is really trying to figure out how we can like act more quickly and more effectively to serve students who have stronger support needs. So these could be either academic or behavioral, but we're really trying to make sure that when students are demonstrating that they need more, that we are building strong plans to support them. Last year, we felt like we didn't adequately plan for how we would meet some of those needs, and that negatively impacted our ability to maintain strong tier 1 culture. So over the summer, we spent a significant amount of time trying to revamp the support plans for the students who were, who we knew had been experiencing challenges last year. So for all of those students who were returning to us, we spent a lot of time like in our campus leadership teams and then with teachers to really think about what are those plans, what worked, what didn't, what do we need to do differently, and making sure people felt knowledgeable and invested in those plans. We also spent time trying to connect with those families to make sure that we were strengthening the relationship so that we could work in partnership to serve their children in the year ahead. our campus teams are also spending a lot more time really trying to like do walkthroughs of classrooms to see for the students who need more support, are the support plans working, just so that that way we can intervene more quickly and make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our students. Our third big instructional focus is collaborative planning meetings. So these are weekly meetings that focus on how teachers are using data to identify how they can deliver like just right instruction to students, with a goal of helping students to grow faster. So in those meetings, teachers are trying to walk away with a clear vision for like, where are my students right now? In like a more detailed way, they're able to really identify what are the groups of students within my class who have similar skill gaps, and what am I going to do in order to make sure that I'm moving every group of student in a way that is right for them, and then monitoring whether what they did actually worked. So our academic team is paying a lot of attention to the quality of our collaborative planning meetings, because we know that without strong coaching and support of those like touch points, we're going to miss a really important opportunity to meet the needs of students. So we believe that if we can do those three things really well, and if we have the right ways to like monitor the implementation and quality of implementation of each of those, like that is going to be what helps to take away some of the variance that we see across classrooms and create more consistently high outcomes. So that's the answer in a nutshell. But now let me take questions. I know, Patrick, you had your hand raised, and Chevy, I know that you had put something in the chat.
Yeah, I was just taking a step back and tell me if I'm wrong. It seems like the focus areas from the data shows that we probably need to focus on elementary school. It seems like the longer the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, we were doing a lot better than at the elementary schools, and also maybe some more focus and emphasis on BMC. Would that be a correct assessment of just that snapshot that you showed? That was kind of like my takeaway, that BMC is a little bit behind our other campuses, and our CAPE scores, particularly in the lower grades, need to kind of catch up also.
Yes, I think that is a fair way to synthesize the data. Our BMC campus has the greatest percentage of like new leaders last year. It was almost an entirely new leadership team, and our team has done a lot of work to really support the knowledge and coaching skill of that team of leaders to be able to more effectively support teachers. And so we have strong retention of our leaders from last year to this year at that across all of our campuses, but particularly at that campus. And so I think we are hopeful that we'll be able to see more moves this year by that team, because leaders will have like another year under their belt, and they've grown a lot in their knowledge of our systems and what they need to do to support teachers.
And a follow-up to Dan's point, and I appreciate and understand the steps that you're taking to get the teachers ready. Is there any consideration, or obviously we have some outstanding teachers, and I know that you've captured what the outstanding teachers are doing, and maybe you're already doing this, but would it be beneficial maybe for maybe a teacher can do a ride along, let's say a teacher that needs, and I know that you outlined the plan, but I was wondering, could we consider maybe a ride along, like, hey, I'm just going to go sit and watch this teacher, and maybe we already do something like that, like, oh, okay, let me take a step back and watch how this teacher interacts with her student and how he or she teaches the class and stuff, and see what I can learn from them and stuff. Maybe in a less formal way. It's like, hey, for the next 2 days, I'm going to go over and sit in this ELA teacher's class because she's obviously doing something right and stuff. Um, and then the other question, just kind of in the same vein, and maybe we already do this too, but I just wrote down, do we call out or award some of the teachers that are doing well, just like, hey, a attaboy or attagirl for, just to acknowledge that they're doing exceptionally well or something like that. Somehow we can maybe call them out and just give them and I thought about this because, we had orientation last weekend. My son's English teacher was bragging about her CAPE scores. Like when she was talking to the parents, she was like, this is what I got last year. Look at how high my students were. And she goes, guess what? We're going to do better this year too. So I was like, oh, that's an enthusiastic teacher. She's like competitive. I want to do better than I did, last year and stuff and stuff. So just started thinking about, I wonder if we can award some of those folks that are, doing extremely well. And maybe we already do it. So I'll shut up and let you talk.
I love that the teacher was so excited to talk about, the way that her students had been able to achieve. I think that's awesome. And clearly reflects a lot of pride on the work that she does. So that's awesome. First, we do try to spotlight teachers that we think are doing a particularly good job. And I know that there are leaders who are very intentional about saying, this is a teacher who, does X really well, go and see them. And sometimes we also do it across campuses, which can be really helpful as well. We do try to recognize teachers who we think are particularly strong. I'm sure that that's always a place where we're trying to get better, because we know that recognition really matters. But that is something that we do try to do, is to make people know that we see the results that they are achieving. That was the end of my presentation.
Laura, this is Terry. Could you go back 4 slides comparing the economically disadvantaged, that slide there? Does that include students, for example, at Friendship, that includes all their students that are economically disadvantaged, all their 8th graders at each of these? This is a pretty amazing slide showing how well we're doing versus the competition. This is tough stuff. But when I look at some of our other CMOs, for example, KIPP sadly is down at 18%. Friendship is at 33%, and we're at 58%. I just want to congratulate you on that wonderful progress. This slide shows it better than most. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
And Laura, to pile on there, when I talk about DC Prep, one of to people in the community and about our scores, just not at this detail, but just, how exceptional they are, as well as the culture, they always come back to me with, oh yeah, but you guys cherry pick. You get the best of the best. And I think this is I don't know how we communicate out that we are quite, that our overall population is not one that is, highly upside down in terms of the populations that we serve. And as a matter of fact, that our focus is exactly as you stated. Do we share that? I don't know how sensitive that is, but I do feel like we've gotten branded a bit in that we have these great scores and we're always excelling, that we're actually not, that we're getting the best of the best kids. Not that these kids aren't terrific kids, but you know what I'm saying, that we're somehow front loading our population.
Yeah, we try really hard to make clear that we are, we take all students through the lottery, right? That we are designed to, address the economic and educational divide that exists in Washington, D.C. We try to be very upfront about that, when we talk to our staff. And I think I would invite others from the team to chime in about like the ways that we try to market ourselves. But it's helpful to hear because we are trying really hard to make sure that we are demonstrating that all students can be successful if they receive a quality education. And I would like to believe that we're a proof point of that.
A quick, another point, the fact that we're not 100% full and for financial reasons would take anybody that walked in off the street anytime in a number of grades and a number of schools, I think goes against what you just said, Pam.
Oh, I 100%. I just, there's truth and then there's perception.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, you're right that it's about kind of the narrative, right? And it's unfortunate that there's always the narrative around charter schools cherry picking, which is the work that we need to do every day just to figure out how do we communicate we are available to any family that wants to enroll their child.
Yeah, agreed. And then this was actually against with people who were affiliated with other charter schools. It wasn't even a DCPS versus, a DC prep or the charter community. It was others in the charter community, which I found, fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other big questions? If not, then I'm going to turn it over to Alicia to talk about safety. Okay. So we will continue to update you on how we're doing against our school plan throughout all of our board meetings. We are doing a lot to really try to think even more rigorously about how we're collecting data to be able to evaluate, where do we need to lean in to support schools differently. And I am excited to be able to share the progress that we make from doing that over the course of the year. So, okay, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia.
Hi, good evening. I'm excited to talk to you all about the hard work that our ops team is doing to promote safety. So Vivian, when you're ready, could you please present the slides? And while she gets those loaded up, I will be transparent with board members who were with us last year. I'm going to start the presentation reviewing our preventative practices that are tried and true, that we continue year over year. And then I'm going to move into sharing with you our priorities to promote safety this year. I'm also happy to present if I need to.
Do you want me to present?
Vivian, let me know if I should just. Okay. On it. Ooh.
Sorry, give me 1 second. My computer's moving a little slow.
It's okay. It's okay, Vivian. I just started presenting, so bear with me as I navigate through screens. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about our priority around safety this year. I'm going to start by grounding us in our philosophy, which has not changed from last year to this year, which is really our belief that the physical safety of our community is really of the utmost importance. Students, staff, and families can't do their best work if they don't feel physically safe. So that's incredibly important. And then we feel we are directly responsible for the physical safety of members of our community when they are at school during work hours or school hours, when they are at any DC Prep sponsored events, and when they are in our DC Prep managed parking lots. We also believe that it's our job to advocate for their physical safety when they are on their way to and from work, even though that's not our direct responsibility. We feel like it's important for us to influence and advocate for their safety. So again, a quick recap of what we always have done and what we continue to do. We always are preparing ourselves for threats that could occur and affect our stakeholders. when they are inside our buildings and when they are outside of our buildings. So this slide just shows you an example of some of the things we're preparing for: severe weather, hazardous conditions, fights, weapons, active shooters. Those are all things that could affect our stakeholders adversely when they are inside of our building. So we have protocols and practices to maintain their safety in event that these things happen. We also have that
Hey,
we
Alicia,
prepare. Yes.
I think at least for Pam and me, we're not seeing the slides advance.
Oh no. That's a bummer. Thank you so much for stopping me.
If you want, I can take over.
Okay, are you ready, Vivian? Go ahead. I think I stopped sharing. Wonderful. Okay, so Vivian, can you go to slide 4? Okay, let me do a quick check for understanding. Can everybody see the slide? Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So we prepare for safety incidents that can occur in our buildings and outside of our buildings. Outside, that includes pedestrian safety issues, safe passage, etc. Next slide. So one of the most foundational things we do to prevent safety issues is building really strong relationships with all of our stakeholders. These relationships allow us to have a heads up when something might be occurring, and it allows us to address issues while they're small and keep them small instead of waiting until they escalate. So the work that our academic team and our ops team does to build these strong relationships is really crucial to our safety work. Next slide. We also have posts and protocols. We make sure that we have security guards on site from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. They are constantly patrolling inside and outside of our buildings to look for safety threats. So that is a really important post, as well as during arrival and dismissal. All of our staff members have duty posts where they are stationed strategically to make sure that our students are well supervised during that pivotal arrival and dismissal time. Our front desk team has visitor protocols that they make sure that they're always enforcing, and we have protocols for what to do in an event of emergency. If there is gun violence or things outside of our buildings, we have building mode, lockdown modes, etc., to make sure that we're constantly keeping our stakeholders safe within our buildings. And then we have an emergency alert system that we use both internally, and we subscribe to the DC emergency alert system so that we know if there are safety incidents happening in our city or around our buildings, we are alerted to them from the city so that we can take appropriate precautions. Next slide. We always conduct a lot of trainings of all of our staff. There's an annual safety training during August orientation for all of our new and returning staff. We give some specialized training in de-escalation strategies to our leaders and select stakeholders, as well as we are constantly training all teachers on best practices to engage our families and to de-escalate. We have visitor protocols that I spoke to a moment ago, and then we conduct drills that are required of us, both evacuation drills, what you might have heard of as fire drills, and lockdown drills. We do those. We remain in compliance with the quarterly lockdown drills that we have to conduct. Also preventative, these are also our preventative practices that we do to keep our buildings in good shape and make sure that our buildings are safe. We do have cameras and video surveillance at all of our campuses. Our facilities team does a lot of hard work to make sure that our building's preventative maintenance schedule is always up to date. So fire alarms, just major building systems, we're always inspecting and ensuring that they're fully operational so that they don't cause safety issues. And we conduct regular vulnerability assessments where we contract with an external safety expert to come and walk the inside and outside of our buildings to give us advice and feedback on any infrastructure improvements that we need to make. The most recent one was in 2023. And then our partnerships and the relationships that we maintain with important agencies and organizations is also critical to our safety work. By us remaining in good partnership with some of these agencies listed, we're either privy to information early, we get a heads up, we get flagged when there are things going on, and we also are able to advocate out when we're noticing trends in safety issues in our communities. We're able to advocate out to ask for additional support where needed. So our relationships with just a few of these partners is really important and pivotal to our safety work. And then continuous improvement. We're always soliciting feedback and looking to get better. We conduct quarterly staff surveys, family surveys, and student surveys. We ask questions explicitly about how safe they feel at school, ways that we can improve safety. The vulnerability assessments that I just spoke to is a way that we are constantly trying to improve and get experts to, to confirm with us that our buildings are safe. And our relationships with other LEAs, since we are in such close proximity to other LEAs in DC, as well as our relationship with other ops leaders across the country, we're constantly trying to source best practices so that we can make sure that we're keeping our buildings and our stakeholders safe. So I believe, those are all the things that we've always done. I think you heard me talk about it last year. Those are practices that we're continuing to focus on and emphasize and ensure that we're doing really well. And then I'm going to talk to you in just a moment about our focus on safety and the things that we're changing for this year. Before I do that, Patrick has a question.
It was more of a comment, and maybe you're going to get to this. I think Laura was saying we now have off-duty MPD folks that are like during dismissal. Could you just like inform the board on that a little bit? Thanks.
Not a problem. My next slide, I believe. Perfect segue. Thank you for that, Tia. So our focus, one of our focus for safety this year is actually on dismissal. So our ops team and our principals, our leaders have done a lot of work to revamp the procedures at dismissal to ensure that they're safe, efficient, and positive for all of our stakeholders. So I'd say like our safety work is really targeted on improving dismissal, and that came from direct feedback from our stakeholders, particularly our families voiced a lot of concern about dismissal in our family survey last year, as well as we had some family task force work that we did last fall, and we heard this pattern about dismissal needing to be improved from families in that way. And so that's how we chose to focus on dismissal and dismissal safety. And so, like I said, we've revamped a lot of procedures to make dismissal more efficient. But when it comes to safety, we have invested in, we've invested a lot of resources in contracting off-duty MPD police officers to support specifically with traffic flow, parking, the things that are just squarely out of DC Prep staff members' control. We can try to influence that. We can try to ask families not to park illegally during our peak dismissal hours, but we're not able to really control that. And so this partnership with our off-duty police officers has allowed them, who have authority over things like parking enforcement and traffic flow, they're able to support us in keeping the traffic moving and ensuring that people are not parking or pulling up in inappropriate places that impedes kids or staff from being able to cross safely. So this has been a tremendously helpful resource that we've invested in. And the next slide, I'm going to just go a little bit more into detail of what MPD does and doesn't do during dismissal, because I think it is really important that we are thoughtful and intentional about how we engage the authorities and our campuses. And so this slide just shows some high level what MPD is really focused on doing. Directing traffic, because we had some incidents with traffic, pedestrian crossings last year. Enforcing parking regulations, because as you all know, all of our buildings are located squarely within like residential tight areas. And so if one or two vehicles park illegally on Edgewood Street, if you've ever been to Edgewood during dismissal, it can really have a tremendous impact on how how efficient and easily traffic flows. So they're helping us with parking enforcement. They also patrol the areas around the perimeter around our buildings and our parking lots before and after dismissal time, because we had some issues. I'm sure you all are aware there was a uptick in nonviolent and violent crime in DC, and so cars were getting stolen, cars were getting broken into, and so as a way to serve as a deterrent, they're patrolling our parking lots and our perimeter to just make sure that only individuals who are supposed to be there are there. And then we want them to build strong, positive relationships so that they're perceived as a partner in our dismissal work. And then the things that they're not doing is they are not in our buildings. They are not patrolling the hallways, the lobbies. They're not engaging directly with students or families outside of the purpose of the traffic control, pedestrian safety, and parking. And then they are not arresting any students on our campus. They have to get special approval by that, and they would have to coordinate with us very tightly about when or how that would happen. And we are hopeful that they would never have to pursue that. The other focus, next slide, the other focus for safety are also our visitor protocols. And so prior to this year, our visitor protocols did not require visitors to show picture ID when they came into our building, but we have since changed that. That is both so that we can have we can better control who is in our building, we can track what the purpose for their visit is, where they're going, and we can just confirm that the people who are in our buildings are who they say they are and are here for noble purposes. And we've also, along with this change, we've also done a better job of encouraging staff to wear their DC Prep lanyards and their photo ID. All staff got their pictures taken during AO kickoff so that they could have a physical student staff ID badge. We are encouraging all of our staff to wear that. And the reason for that is if we do a better job of tracking what visitors are in our building for what purpose, where they're going, and we have a very visible way to notice who our staff are, then that will allow us to better suss out if there are any unwanted visitors or any strangers that are on our campuses. We'll be able to better identify those folks. So that is a policy change that we also implemented this year. And then the last slide before I take some questions, we always are doing physical building improvements and enhancements to ensure that our buildings are safe and well functioned. But specifically this year, to connect with the safety priority, we upgraded our camera systems at Benning and Edgewood. We upgraded the system and we added a few cameras in a few strategic locations where we had blind spots. And so this picture it just shows how clear the visibility is on our camera system. And before, our system was a little bit older and it was a lot harder to be able to access and see footage. We also added a fence around the Benning parking lot, very similar to the fencing that is at our Edgewood campus, as a way to deter folks who might want to loiter or hang out in that parking area. And that was especially important. We heard this feedback from staff. That was especially important. We have a lot of facility staff and a good amount of teachers who get in really early when it's still a little bit dark. And then there are folks that, as you all know, when it gets dark early, later in the year, that not having this fencing was causing a lot of concern and angst because there were sometimes people loitering around the area. So we're really proud of this fencing that we were able to put up, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from our staff for the effort. And I'll also say, like, not pictured is a lot of the other like building work that we do in the summer when we have more time to make larger improvements. We replaced some older doors. We did a lot of we changed a lot of locks. So there's a lot of normal preventative maintenance that goes every summer into our work, but we did a lot of that really intentionally to ensure that we could promote safety and make sure that all of our infrastructure was high functioning. That said, so that's a quick high level review of the safety work that we've done. Are there any questions or comments that anyone else wants to share? I saw there was a question in the chat. But thank you, Dan, for answering that as I was talking. Any other questions?
I'll just make a comment. Just thanks to Alicia and the team, and I would just say, as a parent, this is real. You know, yesterday I got a text that there was a shooting near our Edgewood campus. So, you know, our safety is of the utmost importance and stuff. And I appreciate the efforts that you guys are doing and the coordination and stuff. But, you know, it was during the middle of the day. And as a parent, when you get that text, you kind of go into shock mode and stuff. And I think I pinged Laura immediately to kind of figure out what was going on and stuff. But it was about a block away from where our school was. But the school went down into, I think, building mode and stuff. So, but it's real where our schools are and stuff. So,
yeah, certainly. Thank you for that. And I understand, you know, we understand how concerning that is, which is why we go to these great efforts to ensure that our staff is fully trained. Everyone knows what mode to go into given certain scenarios, and that we're just constantly monitoring. We're on that DC alert system as well, so that as soon as we get pinged on the operations team, we know exactly what kind of mode to put our buildings into. So thank you so much. Thank you all for the time. If you have any questions, you can always reach out, shoot me an email if I can answer any questions, but I appreciate the time to chat with you this evening.
Thanks, Alicia.
thank you.
Okay, next up on the agenda, we were going to celebrate Michaela's many years of service. She had a conflict tonight, so she was not able to make this this board meeting. So the November board meeting will be her last board meeting, and we will get ready to celebrate her then. So get excited. All right, with that, I think we're going to shift into closed session, unless there's anything else that you wanted to cover first, Patrick.
Nope. If not, could I get a motion that we move into closed session?
I motion to move to closed session.
Second.
Great. Tanika. Terry,
Yes.
Lisa. Ahmad.
Yes.
Thanks. Chevy.
He said yes in the chat.
Okay. Dan.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Hadley. Pam.
Hadley
Yeah.
said yes in the chat.
Okay. Thank you. Rashida.
Yes.
And Patrick's yes. The motion is carried. We will now move into closed session.
Great. DC prep team, other than Dan, y'all are
Thank you all, as
and I'll
always.
see you later. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent work.